Evening everyone, Atheist Chef here. Just after finishing a video reply to Bill Nye's Science Lies from Once Forgiven, Now Free, I look up and sure enough, he's got another one. So, figure I'll respond to that one too. So, I'm going to start off, I'm actually going to cut part of the beginning first. Well, it's really not an important part of his argument. It was more of a childish insult. So I'm going to push it toward the end. So I'm going to kind of get to the meat of the argument that he's making and then get to that little bit of immaturity there at the end. So let's begin.
Let me explain. Here's an article on New Scientist called 13 Things That Do Not Make Sense. And at number 2, we have the horizon problem, a light travel time problem for the Big Bang model. It states that nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, so there is no way heat radiation could have traveled between the two horizons to even out the hot and cold spots created in the Big Bang and leave the thermal equilibrium we now see. Looks like you have a problem too, Bill. This horizon problem is a big headache for cosmologists.
The horizon problem was only a headache to cosmologists and scientists in general around the 1980s.
So big, they have come up with some pretty wild solutions. Inflation, for example.
If by wild theory, you mean the only theory able to bring together cosmology and quantum physics, and the only theory that, according to advanced computer modeling, to be able to actually explain the origins of the universe, then yeah, that's incredibly wild.
I guess this is where historical science comes in, right?
As I covered in the last video, there is no real distinction between observational science and historical science. They're essentially the same thing. However, Ken Ham has just changed the definitions to words and just substituted words and other definitions to fit his purposes. So, yeah.
If we assume uniformitarianism, then the Big Bang model is false.
Whoa, hold on there, Sparky. See, I already have a problem with your definition of uniformitarianism. This is a very outdated misrepresentation of what uniformitarianism is. It started out a different way, but 200 years ago and a little bit of science later, things change. So here's probably a bit more accurate representation of what it actually means. Uniformitarianism is not a doctrine. It is a methodology that basically says if we ever want to be able to make reasonable predictions about the world and the universe around us, we have to assume some sort of constancy. If we don't allow for that constancy, then we cannot validate our claims or show any empirical evidence for our hypothesis or hypotheses.
So Big Bang cosmologists have to deny this principle and claim that things were different in the past when we couldn't observe it.
See, it's stuff like this that I have to put up with when people like Ken Ham and these creation websites completely misrepresent a position. They'll present an outdated form or definition of something to try to, and make a little hefty little straw man. As I said before, they have been misrepresenting uniformitarianism by representing a older, more strict uniformitarianism. Back in the day, 200 years plus ago, when it was being created to be opposite of catastrophism. So basically uniformitarianism was saying, like, no, everything was slow, gradual changes, and that was it. As opposed to the catastrophism was saying it was all just, creation, basically. The Christian creation was the inspiration for catastrophism. But as we've learned and as we've, gotten smarter, we basically said, okay, look, things generally are the same. However, there are random events that happen. Volcanoes, etc., etc. These are local catastrophes that can, explain things. We can't say that it was, just all slow, gradual things. So, we, as people that believe in science or advocate science or uniformitarianism or naturalism, we have updated our definition to reflect reality. We admit that it's not a slow and gradual process. However, the methodology pretty much remains the same. That everything throughout the beginning of space and time, the natural laws have been pretty damn consistent. And they have to be. Otherwise, we would be just clueless on how the world operates around us. We wouldn't have any understanding if it wasn't consistent. So embracing the idea that there was a giant universal catastrophe, I'm saying that kind of loosely, catastrophe, a big giant traumatic event, accepting that does not break away from uniformitarianism. That is the methodology of the day. That is how scientists and geologists have pretty much learned to accept things. It changes the old, outdated, 200-plus-year-old understanding of uniformitarianism. But as I've said before, we've gotten a little bit smarter. And finally, before the Big Bang, we've pretty much assumed that every basic law of physics and space-time and gravity and all that stuff, there was none. It was completely broken down according to what we understand as of right now. So this Big Bang, this inflation that was happening currently, was the very beginning of every law in our observable universe, which I guess it can be argued. Somebody maybe smarter than me can probably point out, but I think I'm saying that correctly. That was the very beginning of the laws of our observable universe. Now, secondly to the finally, that even is a thing, this inflation theory doesn't break anything, or is it something, where laws were different from before? They either didn't exist or now they exist and they've stayed the same since then. This inflation doesn't break any laws.
This is ironic considering Bill Nye was not even willing to acknowledge the difference between historical and observational science in the debate, as I pointed out in my last video.
Which, as I've pointed out in this video and the prior video before, there isn't.
How serious is this light travel time problem? Here's the nonsense they have to make up. You can solve the horizon problem by having the universe expand ultra fast for a time, just after the Big Bang, blowing up by a factor of 10 to the 50, that's a 1 followed by 50 zeros, an insanely large number, and this expansion rate is supposed to happen how fast? In 10 to the negative 33 seconds. That's 0.0000033 zeros with a 1 at the end.
Big numbers, tiny numbers, oh my god, I don't know what to do! How can this possibly work? Creationists have this thing where big numbers are only good, or hard to fathom numbers are only good, when it's useful for their argument. If anybody's remember that argument with talking about the chances of the Earth being formed was like billions and trillions, whatever, really high number. Or what are the odds that an advanced nucleotide could form, from this, and this, and they use a big number. Big numbers are fine for them. But when we throw out numbers at them, that they have to say, oh, well, that's bizarre. But I mean, I guess it is. It is bizarre to think that, a tiny, infinitely small singularity expanded, inflated, really, really ridiculously fast. I forgot the number. Really, really fast. And was just so huge. Yes, that is really hard for our brain, our logical, reasonable brain, to think about. But of course, you remember back in the day, it was really hard to imagine that the Earth was flat. Or, the Earth could be round. Or that rain was not from gods. Or that we could ever actually reach the moon. Or that the sun was millions of miles away. And the speed of light. As we progress and grow, we learn new things. And those really weird, abstract concepts don't faze us anymore. They're amazing to think about, but we don't sit there and go, oh, that's just illogical. That doesn't make any sense. There's no way it can happen. But, that's just me. That's just, maybe I'm the only person that finds that to be normal.
Even this article admits, but is this wishful thinking? Yes, it is.
That's actually a question, not really an admission. Now, this was the New Scientist magazine, and I wasn't really familiar with it, and I don't think most people are. However, it seems to be sort of legit. It's not like a peer-reviewed journal or anything. It's just a magazine of cool sciencey stuff. They've had some problems in the past. They tried to, they've had some things that seem very pro-creationism, and even this article kind of seems like it as well. But I'm not going to make judgment on them. I don't know. It's very hit or miss. But he goes on and says, is this wishful thinking? And the question that the magazine actually did ask, but then he fills it with yes. Now, the article did not say that. And I couldn't access the entire article because it was one of those things where you have to pay for it, and I'm not paying for it just to prove this guy wrong. But he automatically assumed that it was a yes, that it was wishful thinking. But we don't know, because it's also the possible answer could be no. So that's a little bit disingenuous, if you ask me. Especially when scientists actually can explain it, but he just wants to, and creationists as well primarily, and he just agrees with them, want to dismiss it out of hand, just because it's a big number.
Bill Nye wants to point out the apparent light travel time problem in the creationist model, but he's either unaware or ignorant of his own light travel time problem. Keep racing along your tractor trailer, Bill. The refutations you throw at creationists are actually destroying your own foundation, especially since you're the one who adheres to this principle of uniformitarianism. Creationists don't. And that's why creation scientists have proposed solutions to this apparent problem in our model. Dr. Russel Humphreys has a model.
So down below I've included a link to Russel Humphreys' hypothesis, speculation, whatever you want to call it, and currently so far there's not any valid refutations for it. Whoa. 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 Okay, I'm sorry, I lied. There's like 4 or 5 refutations of it. Just go away, go quick. Somebody click them and I'm sorry, just click them quick, hurry. Are they gone? Okay. After the refutations left, thank you for clicking, by the way. I was able to read his model, his website that had the model explaining what his theory for the inflation theory, or something similar to that. But basically, long story short, is he assumes that there is a big ball of water that surrounds the outsides of our observable universe. So yeah, so big ball of water, galaxies and stars and all that stuff. Now, basing this off Genesis, 1 through 1, Genesis 1 basically. Now, I am not a scientist, and they threw a lot of techno jargon and crap at me, and I didn't understand that. However, those other refutations have that pretty well covered. But I can shoot his down basically from his bad understanding of the Bible. Now, if we remember in Genesis 1, if you look up third tier universe, basically, especially when it comes to the Jewish people, how they understood the earth according to the scripture, and this is the old way of thinking. Even the the ancient people didn't really much fathom the universe early enough on, but particularly these early Israelites, they thought everything was this firmament. There was just basically, imagine just a big giant snow globe. Is third tier universe. Look it up. And they thought the stars were inside this firmament, inside a firmament. So they had no concept for an early universe. And if you don't believe me, why don't you go ask some, the early Jewish people and the Jewish sects, S-E-C-T-S. Not Jewish sex. That's a weird picture in my head, because now I'm picturing a chick wearing the hat with the thingies that you see the rabbis wear. And maybe some of you may get off on that, but I sure don't. But anyways, that's just how it is. The point is, the word heaven, it created the heavens. It was the word for sky. Sky, it just over and over. And this is according to Strong's Concordance. And any variation, the home of the stars, the abode of the stars, I should say, sky. and heavens. There was no universe and space to these people. They thought the stars were tiny little dots inside the little firmament. So basically, the Bible is sitting there telling you, no, this is not an actual heaven / in galaxies and universes and whatnot. This is just a tiny little orb over there. Or as it, well, big to them, but in comparison to the universe. So they had no idea. And so to formulate an entire scientific hypothesis around that one scripture, just off that one wrong word, definitely shows the leading the evidence to the conclusion that this guy does. So even if all the science made sense and it didn't have the refutations that you'll find in the links, the basis that his entire hypothesis is based off a scripture and it doesn't mean what he thinks it means, well, whatever, it's too late. He's already wrong. He's already proven himself wrong.
As does Dr. Jason Lyle, and I'll post a link in the description.
Now, Jason Lyle's work is a little bit harder to refute, but here, and if not there, somewhere down there in the below section, we'll see some refutations for Jason Lyle's.
Or some creationists even believe that God created the light in transit.
What's funny about this hypothesis, I'm just going to keep calling it speculation, is that Jason Lyle's, the creationist scientist he just mentioned, just before this, actually admits on several occasions that the idea that it was made in transit wouldn't work. And he says, no, it was not made in transit. So when you have your fellow creationist telling you to not believe that it was done in transit, well,
either way, the serious light travel time problems dwell in the Big Bang model.
So what about the evidence for the inflation theory? I've already given enough information why you shouldn't believe the two creationist models. But what about the actual model we have? Now, of course, as I've said before, computer modeling shows that it's the currently best model that we've ever have and explains so many things. But some of the physical evidence currently has to do, well, one with some gravitational waves and whatnot. But I'm gonna post a link down below so you can actually read it for yourself. And I recommend reading it like 7 times because it's pretty hard. But one of the best models, it shows that when they were studying the cosmic microwave background, that image is like yellow and blue and it's all whatever, the fossil light of the explosion, inflation. Basically, they were measured the temperature of it, and it was pretty much the same all throughout, like a 0.0003 degrees Celsius difference and it helps to explain why inflation is the only way that could be humanly possible. Possible for that. In a non-inflation theory, basically there would be wild temperatures, basically just everywhere. Some would be really hotter than the other, whatever, because of that expansion and whatnot. In fact, the universe is actually, I think this is too young or it's too large for a non-inflation model to explain why there's perfect heat. Basically, they're so far apart from each other. The parts that are actually interact with each other inside the galaxy are so far apart that they wouldn't be able to exchange heat with each other. And again, you can read that in the article below. But that's a pretty interesting little bit there. But finally, for the past 4 or 5 years, they've been taking pictures using the Planck satellite. And right now, I'm talking as of January, February, they're taking all these photos and they're studying them right now. And they say that in a few months, they're going to be able to piece together all that they've seen. And there's certain factors that they're looking for. Something about B-sides, basically, whatever. Again, read the article and it's going to make more sense. And there's going to be able to things that they're going to find. And when/if they find these things, if they are correct, then this is going to be a huge huge empirical verification for the inflation model. So creationists, you have like 2 or 3 months at most to plan and strategize for when they do find these things, in case they do. So it'll be interesting to see if they do, or what they find, because this is going to be a game changer. This is going to make or break the actual, the inflation theory. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's going to make it, but so we're going to find out the truth about things when these photos come in. So keep your guys' eyes out. This is going to be a huge thing. So let's move on to the final bit, the immaturity of certain things that I found in this video that need to be noted.
Now, as far as the distance to stars, understand this is very well understood. There are billions of stars, more than 6,000 light years from here. So, Mr. Ham, how could there be billions of stars more distant than 6,000 years if the world's only 6,000 years old? It's an extraordinary claim.
So Bill Nye claims the creationist model has a light travel time problem. But do you know what he just did? It's as if creationists are at a race and Bill Nye comes over to mock our race car because he thinks we can't win the race. So you look over at Bill Nye and you see that he showed up to the race with a lawnmower tractor. Really, Bill? You want to question our speed? Isn't that hypocritical? So next time a Big Bang believer wants to try and point out your light travel time problem,
how could there be billions of stars more distant than 6,000 years if the world's only 6,000 years old? It's an extraordinary claim.
Just remember that they are the ones showing up at the race with a lawnmower tractor.
It's one thing to, criticize someone's claim and, take a cheap shot at them. But this running gag with the lawnmower bit happened 3 or 4 times throughout the thing. And I didn't post it all there, but it's all in the video. But the thing is it was a straw man to begin with. They said, they're misrepresenting Bill Nye, misrepresenting science in general, misrepresenting the inflation theory, misrepresenting uniformitarianism, all of these things, and then they're making this, nifty little straw man, putting a straw man with a lab coat and a bow tie and putting him on a lawnmower and calling this just piss poor representation of what the actual scientific claim is. And it would be one thing if the analogy actually fit, but it doesn't, because it just comes from a complete misrepresentation of it. And so I think that's probably what bothers me the most. It wasn't even a good one, but anyways, hopefully this was enough to show once again that once forgiven, now free is now deceived, or continuing to be deceived, and then assisting Ken Ham and his ilk on deceiving others. This is the Atheist Chef, signing off. Peace.